Hello, and welcome back. My name's Corbin, and you're watching episode 9 of my heavily modded Forever world. Previously, we left off getting this massive perimeter cleared out, and well, here we are. See, this episode took a little bit longer to get out than I wanted it to, because the clearing of the perimeter and getting the foundational block placed, the deep slate, took way longer than I expected it to. I pretty much have been on and off AFKing for about a week, maybe a week and a half now. It's pretty awesome. We got the entire floor placed and all of the walls propped up so we could see the entire circle and the scope of it. But yeah, this took about 11 builders all running constantly, and it still took me about a week to AFK this and clear it out, but hopefully we can get this video cranked out and we'll get some fun stuff rolling. But I'm pretty excited with how this turned out, because you can see how our main base sits just off the center, and it's dwarfed by this entire circle. The entire radius of this is about 1,024 blocks, the diameter being 2,048, and I plan to put the Hive City in the center off of that stack that we were just standing on. The scaffolding stack right over there. For this episode, I'm really interested in seeing what kind of shapes we have to work with. So I want to, well, work from the inside out. And I want to get what is going to be our main structure at least planned. It's definitely not going to be up today because I need to collect a lot more blocks and maybe even build a lot more farms. But it wouldn't hurt to scribe out a bit of a floor plan, if you will. I'm thinking about making it a hexagon, maybe even an octagon, just so I could have separated wings of the base for my different production types. But what I know for sure I want is the basement of the whole thing is going to be a sequence of pillars and columns for ME drives that I'm going to fill up to the brim, and that's going to be our tech archives. But the primary topic of this episode that I want to do is we need a food source. I have been munching on bread non-stop and I'm getting sick of it, so why don't we make tacos? So this is also probably a good time to show you how I plan my base designs out and my builds, but there is a mod that allows you to customize the shapes. So I'm going to stand right here in the center where I want the focal point to be. I'm going to press my button. I'm going to set my origin point, which is exactly where I'm standing, and then we could choose the shape type. In which case, for this scenario that I made the entire perimeter, I use sphere, but when we want to make a hexagon or octagon, we could use the polygon. Right here, we choose the amount of sides we want. Let's start with 6. And the radius, for demonstration purposes, I'll set it to 10, so you could see how it makes it. And then you hit the enable button up here, and you could visualize it. Now, this happened to make it on the y-axis, so I can go back into it and change it for the... Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it was on the x-axis, and we changed it to the y-axis. So now you could see what the hexagon would look like in this configuration. We could also rotate it by a certain amount of degrees. So if we don't want it to be perfectly aligned, we could change it up like that. Looking at it from a bird's eye view, an octagon makes the most sense for the shape I'm going to use here. It'll give me the opportunity to put in the wings I'm talking about for the processing. I'm also going to make it go all the way to world height, but at the top I'm going to taper it off to a point so that it does look like a growing city from the center out. Well, I went ahead and built this part of the base up. This is just the floor plan down, so we can get an idea what kind of pathways and the shapes that we're working with. But the general height of it and the meat of the walls is probably going to have to get done off camera just so I can get it placed down. But I will certainly come back around and do a lot of the detailing with you on camera so we won't miss any of that good stuff. For our taco production, it's actually not terribly complex, but I'll go ahead and I'll walk you through what we're looking to do with what we need. So for the vegetables, we'll end up doing a process with the Botania pots. This works really simple, kind of like a hopper, but you put in a piece of dirt, the seed, and then it will automatically pump it out to whatever you need it to go to. So that's how we'll collect a lot of the, the tomatillo, the chili pepper. But for something like cheese, it takes a crafting step. So we'll need to make a crafting system that'll auto-craft for us. That way we don't have to manually be in here resetting these recipes. However, the hardest part about this whole process is actually the collecting of the milk. We'll end up having to make another farm using the animal rancher right here, and this essentially clicks or shears anything that's within its radius, which is what you can see here, and this will collect the milk buckets. As well as another minor step is the salt. So salt we already have outside our brine tanks that have been used to create the lithium, but I could just convert this into gaseous brine and then crystallize it to make salt. Here we have it. This is the entire setup that's going to produce us tacos. I had to turn the cow volume down because they were just too loud to talk over, but I will try to run you by how this setup works exactly. As you can see, we have an applied energistic system set up here, and the only new thing that we've done from all of the other setups I have shown you is that we added auto crafting. This is essentially a pattern terminal. It looks very similar to the ME interface, which is why I got it confused earlier. And the molecular assemblers all touch base onto the pattern provider, which in turn feeds the crafting recipes into them. They serve as a crafting table, and then they automatically input back into itself. Another few things that I had to do was connect the milk plug, which is pretty much over here. This feeds it buckets, and the buckets convert into milk in here, and then it feeds it back into this interface through the green logistical transport pipe, as well as all of our crops go into the system with the green logistical transport pipe so that they fill up in this interface. The only thing I went ahead and added off camera was that I needed a source of water for the crafting recipe to work, so I just put a sink into the interface, and I had to make a fluid storage cell. So now we have the ability to craft tacos. Let's see if I have enough for 10. I do. So you just press the number you want, 10, and it'll automatically craft us tacos. Now, the only thing that I was messed up with in this setup was that the mob slaughter factory, which is what I was going to use to harvest the cows, only gives me fluid meat, and I can't convert that to raw beef, which is what I need to make the tacos. So I'm going to use a different method, which is actually what this soul extractor is up here for. Essentially, this allows me to make seeds out of the mob essences. So if I put a certain amount of meat in here, you can see that the crafting recipe goes in and it fills up this jar just by a little portion. And I have to get 4 of these jars to make 1 seed to get the cow essence. And the same seed can go into our crop pots that will produce us cow essence, and I can just craft beef that way. I didn't want to have to do it this way, but the alternative would have had to be a mob crusher, and the resources to craft the advanced machine frame is just a little bit more expensive that I care to do, because then I'd have to go collect pink slime, then I had to sacrifice some netherite scrap, and that's after I do the simple machine frame, which would be this configuration right here. So I just think that it'd be a little bit easier to start working with the mob essence seeds, because eventually I'm going to have a bunch of different types of them. But yeah, what I'm going to have to be doing is just manually killing them until I fill enough jars to get maybe 1 or 2 of these pots built up. But we now have tacos. Us now having our tacos, we got plenty of fuel to survive these slimes as they attack us. I think now we can get a little bit more of the footprint down for the base. I'm going to work on a little bit of an idea that I have in mind, and I think that's worth kind of explaining. So this center area that I've marked out so far is going to be the center cathedral, but I think I want to put some kind of a moat around it. So I'm going to inscribe a circle that's like roughly 20 blocks out from this wall face, and then that's going to divide the center area from the rest of the entire hive city. But once we get that center area out, we can start planning sections like where it's going to go to and what we're going to need to build. The amount of space I have set out is just way more than I'm going to need for all of the actual processing itself. But for starters, I want to get at least this main cathedral down so we could start shifting our base over into it. And then probably after that, I'm going to set up one of these guardian temple areas, either up here closer to us or a little farther away, depending on just where we want to be working out of. That outer ring certainly gives the look that I'm going for. Imagine that in between this outer ring and the octagon, there's going to be some sort of an acid vat at the bottom, and that's going to be my moat. But yeah, that acid vat, then I'm probably going to have sections off of each one of the faces of the octagon lead out as like some big grand gates, and then the center will be the cathedral. And the vision I have in mind, I'll try to explain what I mean by that. So the world height, and the reason I went all the way down to bedrock, is that it gives me access to the full 384-ish blocks, give or take a few for the bedrock layers and this one layer up top. But if we divide that number by 20, you get about 19 layers tall in blocks, or so I'll try to explain it. So each one of these blocks represents 20 blocks in terms of the entire height of this building. So the first few blocks down here, I'm probably not going to do much with, but then this next 40 block section right here is probably going to be the tech archives. Maybe even 60 blocks, because I want it to be a very grand looking room. And this tech archive is going to serve as my... It's going to look like a really big library with drones flying around it, and as well as my entire applied logistics system, so that we can have all of our storage for our items. And then after that, I'm probably going to do a sequence of skipping a few blocks, or a few sections of blocks, because it thins out toward the top. So I might skip a few, and then add maybe 2 layers of room space for my different auto craftings and machine. So let's say we skip, what is that, 60 blocks. We'll add 2 layers of auto crafting space for us to be able to visualize. And then we will probably skip more blocks all the way up to the top, where we're going to have our main base station lookout. So this peak's probably going to be relevant, so is this one, and we'll have another maybe 40 block section that's going to be our vast room. So now that we have this represented, this being the entire height, this is probably the room spaces that I'm going to have within this build. The lower half is probably going to be fluff and filler, and then the tech archives is probably going to be my favorite part about this whole build, because I plan to do a lot with it. You know, if we have, I don't know, let's try to visualize it a bit in drives. The amount of drives I'm probably going to need is a couple hundreds. So if we have our octagon, let's say this is the center of our base, and we have an octagon going something like this. Yeah, something vaguely like that. Each one of these spires is going to have floor to ceiling drives in a 4x4, or maybe more like a something like that. So each one of these pillars is going to be drives, and there's going to be 8 of them floor to ceiling. So maybe a couple thousand drives, now that I think about it. Still certainly want to take the time to appreciate how big this perimeter is. I don't know what the biggest Minecraft perimeter is altogether that somebody has done in survival. Granted, I will take it with a grain of salt. This is modded, so I didn't have to make any flying machines that excavated the entire area. But tomato tomato. My perimeter is 2,048 blocks in diameter. I think the record is something like 2,000 by 5,000 or something, so it's more of a rectangle shape, and it's longer rather than wider. But, you know, I think I'm up there. And truth be told, I really wanted to make the perimeter even bigger. I wanted it to be so big that my entire screen, even with distant horizons, was the entire city. I was going to go for something more like 10,000 blocks, which is about 5 times as big as what this is right now. But you know, I think it makes a little bit more sense to hyper-focus on one more detailed build, and then as I progress, if I want to make anything bigger, or even if I want to start a new world someday and make that my next big goal, is to do grander and grander builds. This will do, though. This will do. The Hive City is going to be the central point, and everything that I care about most is going to be within the Hive City, but I'm also going to do things around the world, maybe not terribly far out of sight. I want to be able to see most of what I do from the Hive City, but because Warhammer is not the only series that I want to gravitate to here, I want to do things like Dark Souls and Trench Crusade. I want to add aspects of those builds elsewhere. So I might do like a Lothric style castle somewhere. I might do the trenches of the Iron Wall from Trench Crusade and things like that. As well as we talked about in a previous episode about the spaceship fleet in the end. These are all really big builds that are still lingering in my mind and how I want to do them, but this Hive City is going to be the production of everything that I'm going to need to make all these builds happen. What is this? A Void Blossom. Oh yeah, I think that's one of the... We'll try to find it. Yes, this is from the Bosses of Mass Destruction mod. Sure, we'll go ahead and kill it. I wonder if I can kill it in F5. Oh! Oh, I got it. It was gonna start spawning these little spores that heal it, kind of like the Ender Dragon, but stopped it. That was distracting. That sets us up pretty well to wrap up this episode. We have our new taco production build. Better food source so that we can go ahead and build a lot more and not have to worry about our saturation. As well as we now have the footprint for our next main base going to get figured out. Followed by that, I plan to get a few more farms and a few infrastructure down so that we can get more production and more building going. Unfortunately, this video took slightly longer than I wanted to get out, just because the AFKing of this perimeter just took that long, even with all of the resources that I had at my disposal. But here we are. Anyways, hope you enjoyed and take care. Later.